num num, num num, birdie num num.
When I have understanding of computers, I shall be the supreme being. God isn't interested in technology. He knows nothing of the potential of the microchip or the silicon revolution. Look how he spends his time. 43 species of parrots. Nipples for men.
Don't do that, Jesus Christ! You're gonna get me killed!
Out of here!
Oh, Billy. And we are live. Welcome everybody to, yes, Aeon Byte Live. And yes, we live in a world where men still have nipples. And there are 43 species of parrots. I think there's more than that. For those of you who will be listening in audio, that's the AB Live intro. And it's pretty raunchy, but what are you going to do? My name is Miguel Connor, and I am still your pompatus of Gnosis. So welcome, everybody. I see people already piling into the chat room. We will give our ground rules and all that good stuff here on this Tuesday, I believe, Tier Day. Let's see. No, but let's see. In Spanish, Martes. Today is the day of Mars, of Aries. But it is always eternal here at the virtual Alexandria. And we are very excited about tonight's show. We have with us Daniel Mahler to discuss his book, The Shamanic Soul, a book that I really dug. It was really awesome. Not only is full of good knowledge and he hits all the right notes, especially with the ethos of Aeon Byte, but it's a practical book that has a ton of small, large, good exercises. And I definitely highly recommend. I also read the Shamanic Kabbalah, another excellent book by Daniel. So Daniel, thank you very much for coming on the show. How are you?
Good. Thanks, Miguel. Thanks for having me. Really excited.
Excited to talk to you, man. And with us, we've got the Moondog Vance. Vance, is Birdie happy we brought in the Birdie Num Num intro?
He's delighted. He's singing back there. You hear him?
I hear him.
Yep. All right, Birdie, you're on.
Good deal.
All right. So I have let's ask the audience to please put questions in all capitals and like question marks afterwards. And also for tonight, please don't squeeze the shaman.
You never know what might come out.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm dating myself. Does anybody remember that commercial?
Yes, unfortunately, yes.
Yeah.
I remember the days of when commercials meant something and we listened to their music and remember their stupid ass tunes. Lord have mercy. I don't know if today's are better. It's just different. And yes, for the audience, please write all capitals or question marks. If you have a super chat, we will get you to the top of the line. And please understand there is no guarantee we'll get to your questions, but we always try our best to make you have a voice, and that's the reason for Aeon Byte, or one of the reasons for AB Live. So, but anyway, not much in housekeeping, no big news. Shows continue to come. Our next show will be everybody's favorite boogeyman, the Illuminati. That will be next week, and I think you'll enjoy it. But it's more, isn't it more of a sober historical one, Vance? It's not the usual stuff.
Yeah, I got a couple of pyramid jokes in, but yeah, it was pretty mysterious. I burned my Illuminati card after,
But it's still fascinating. Just
it
historical,
was really
fascinating organization. Very so. And we talk about the reasons why they became such a legendary group, but that will be next week. And
Adam, yeah,
somebody wrote Illuminati. It's like so awesome. Well, Daniel, let's start talking about you. How did you exactly get into shamanism?
Well, it really just kind of came on at an early age. I was raised in the Ozarks. I was raised with kind of your traditional Midwestern Christian upbringing, but my own personal religious leanings always led towards something more natural, more tangible. I was always, one of the kids that was just asking too many questions and inquiring a little too deeply about scripture and asking questions that shouldn't be asked. So, um, and I was lucky enough to kind of grow up on a really nice piece of land, and I had my own like set of woods in my own very backyard, and that's where I spent most of my time. I lived pretty far out. I didn't live in any neighborhood. And so it was always kind of like in me being in the natural world and just learning to have a relationship with God directly from nature. Um, but it never really quite hit that you could get shamanic training, that you could interact with people that were still practicing these, ancient indigenous ways that you only saw in movies. It always just seemed kind of like this far away prospect for me that wasn't really real or tangible until really my like late 20s, early 30s. I was not doing very well in my life, as you read in my book. I was suffering from PTSD. I was incredibly sick. I was in and out of the hospital, and someone had suggested to me to see a Native American healer or a shamanic healer. I had no idea what really that meant. But fortunately, I live in a community in Kansas City. We're a thriving spiritual community on the alternative circuit. You wouldn't think so, but there's just a mass quantity of different variations of alternative spiritual traditions and faiths here. And somebody actually hooked me up with someone who was trained in Peruvian Coronismo and who was linked back to many generations and a very specific lineage of Peruvian shamanism. And he had also been trained with other variations of Northern Native American healing methods, specifically from the Lakota lineage. And I mentioned him in my book as Don Daniel himself. So his name was Daniel itself, which was quite coincidental. And he ended up only living about 20 minutes away from me on the outskirts of the city. And through him, I ended up getting hooked up with a wide network of people in Peru, across the world. And it just, never looked back. Really, really turned me around. And so that's when I really went deep.
Awesome. Yes, I love in your book you share your experiences, both mystical challenges and like all of us, there's no one and done. It's a process that continues no matter how spiritually advanced you think you are. But what struck me or jumped out was you talked about Don Daniel, and he told you that you were, when he read you, you might say, he said, you are fragmented. You needed basically individuation. So he was already like whipping out a form of Jungianism, but as we'll
Yeah.
talk, Jung, what Jung did was a shamanic journey.
Yeah.
So the language these shamans speak is the same one, but he said you were fragmented, you need to be united. And he also quoted the Gospel of Thomas, that famous
Yes.
saying to you, if you bring forth what is within you, it will save you. If you do not bring it forth, it will kill you. So that was right there. And then he teach you right there that there's different worlds and you're supposed to get all your three worlds together. Is that what it was?
Yeah. So, I can't speak to every shamanic cosmology that's out there, but specifically from the Peruvian tradition that I practice, there are three basic worlds that are not really literal places of being, but they're more states of consciousness, dimensions of being within oneself and how you interact with the world around you. And they're split into three different places. So we call them the low. And Michael Harner kind of broke it all out in the way of the shaman, and many other anthropologists have, kind of distilled, this into either the lower world, the middle world, or the higher world. And in Peru, they call it the Ukupacha, the Kaipacha, and the Hanakpacha, which just literally mean that lower, middle, higher worlds. And what they are, though, is that if you want to kind of relate them to a person's consciousness, the lower world is that place where your subconscious resides. So it's very Jungian in the sense that, the subconscious isn't bad, but definitely, you know, if you have repressed emotions, repressed memories, you know, things like that, that you struggle with and are in conflict with, it's just like that saying of Yeshua and Gospel of Thomas, what is within you will destroy you if you don't, you know, bring it out and assimilate it. And the same with the upper world is kind of like that higher world of like aspirations, your inspirations within your life. You can relate that to, you know, angels and the heavens or whatnot, but I don't really tend to make it that literal. And the middle world is right here where like those two things meet, like your higher self and lower self coalesce here in this realm. And to do that in a balanced way is to be able to be open to both states of being and bring them here. And when one doesn't, you're acting from a fragmented state, from a broken state of mind. You're not able to actually participate in this world in a balanced way, in a way that actually serves your highest good and the highest good of those around you. So that was the whole process of my healing endeavor. I mean, I had gone through, I mean, I had physical ailments. My emotional state had manifested into like physical states of being. I was, you know, covered in boils, you know, 24 hours a day that were like constantly bleeding, painful. They kept putting me into the hospital, and they just kept me. At one point, it got so bad, a doctor had even possibly mentioned amputation on when I had one on my leg. It was horrific. But you know, through that sort of shamanic work that I did with Don Daniel was able to kind of like merge these worlds within myself, which is based upon, if you think about, you know, past, present, and future, that lower realm is sort of like those regressions of your past, the higher realm, your aspirations for the future, and bringing those into the present in a holistic way and accepting, you know, those regressions of your past. It was through that, you know, I was able to kind of find that process of individuation, which Jung talks about. And you know, I don't have those physical disabilities anymore. I mean, I've been healed. I mean, part of that was a lot of like this, you know, a lot of work that had to be done, as well as, you know, using, you know, Western medicine at the same time. I'm not going to say that it was just like this complete miracle that Western medicine didn't help. But it didn't get me there because I was using Western medicine, and it wasn't getting me to the state where I needed. And, you know, if you talk to doctors, they'll always say, hey, if you're really stressed, you're going to get sick. That manifests in a real way, and that can manifest in a real dangerous way, specifically when it comes to things like trauma. So,
yeah, for sure. Yeah, as they say, the body doesn't lie, and all that stuff has to go somewhere somehow. So, well, glad you found your path. It's almost yeah, it's always a great thing when you can find what works for you. And it's interesting. I am directly quoting Don Daniel, where he says, the shamanistic journey is about getting to know yourself deeply. So would you say that is what shamanism, or when people ask you, I'm sure when you're at a supermarket, some lady will go turn around, hey, what is shamanism? Forget about Will Smith and Chris Rock. What is shaman? What what is your elevator pitch of what is people ask me that about Gnosticism all the time. Yes,
the
no,
Will
go
Smith
ahead.
slap is shamanism.
Exactly.
No, I like to define shamanism as any kind of psychonautic endeavor that enters a person into an altered state. So it doesn't have to be psychedelics, entheogens. It doesn't have to be a shamanic journey. It could be meditation, drumming, whatever. But whatever gets you within an alternate state where you are traveling to other places of being, states of being, such as those three worlds, interacting with entities within those states, and then bringing wisdom back, bringing medicine back. So that to me is like what makes something shamanic, really. And Roger Walsh has a really good, in his book World of Shamanism, he has an excellent definition of it that I'm kind of paraphrasing, but those are kind of the main points of being. It has to be of service, so you're doing something of service to another individual, but you have to be traveling into those altered states and getting information, whether it's a medicine journey or a, you know, a statement, a certain kind of shamanic healing, whatever that you're bringing back to bring to another human being. So that's kind of what I feel like, you know, the definition is. It doesn't necessarily have to be indigenous, right? It doesn't have to be something that is specific to a tribe of some sort. I mean, that's the kind of endeavor that we can do here in the modern world. And that's one thing I learned too, is, you know, as a shamanic practitioner, if you're just trying to practice and replicate what the person did before you, there's something about the shamanic path that really tries to resist doctrine, and it doesn't like repetition. It likes to adapt, because it's part of like the evolutionary cycle of the planet. It's part of us as evolving human beings. So because of that, like, shamanic practices have to grow and adapt, you know, into the modern world. And that's one thing I really appreciate about a lot of like the Peruvian methods. There's a syncretic nature to all of them that bring in Roman Catholicism. They bring in other modern methods, Tarot, Kabbalah. So, you know, I've found that really interesting about the kind of Peruvian motif, shamanic motif.
Love to hear that. Yeah, I think I would agree with you. The shaman is the individual who is the explorer of the soul. And obviously we can agree from the hermetic ideals that as above, so below. If you go within, you're really taking a travel to another universe. You're going to places where time and space are going to break down. Normative reality is going to break down. You're going to get into these powerful places, whether you call them the collective unconscious, the Akashic records, the place of your ancestors, the next universe. But the shaman, like you said, is the hero that goes to these spiritual places and brings back the knowledge for the tribe. And this can be, the Gnostics were very shamanistic, altered states, voyages, Merkabah Jews, many Neoplatonists. Like you said, it's just not people in Siberia or South America.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that's one thing I've always appreciated about Gnostic traditions and Hermeticism. They're very, I mean, Gnosis is shamanism to me. They're like very synonymous with each other. And so I'm kind of at a point where it's really hard for me to define something as strictly shamanic because of that. So it's a term that's very fluid at this point in our nomenclature in the 21st century.
It is. Sometimes it's confusing. I mean, terms like pagan, gnosis, occultism. Why does that word even exist? Nothing's hidden anymore.
Yeah.
It's just it's so, but again, I think shamanism works. I love the fact that you bring the syncretic part, because I agree with you that in that place, these religions, even Gnosticism and they were very new agey. They grabbed wherever they felt like because it worked. So, and if the Peruvians are doing it, it's great, because do you ever get accused of cultural appropriation? My stance is simple. If something calls you, I don't give a shit what it is. I'm going, you know, if a Chinese religion called me, or a god from Ethiopia, I don't care. I'm going for it.
Yeah, I've gotten accused of cultural appropriation a lot. I I was even very closely involved with some Northern Native American traditions, and there are many that are very open and accepting. There are many that very much are not, and understandably so. But my stance on that, and what was taught to me by my teachers, Don Danielle, Don Oscar, and others, is that, the shamanic path is global. It's universal. It like, we're all, sisters and brothers. We're all children of Gaia, of Mother Earth, of Pachamama, as they say in Peru. And that it doesn't matter if you're in one tribe or another, or one lineage or another. Like, we're all like able to like have these skills. I don't even want to like call them gifts. It's just skills that we've long forgotten. And it's time for us to just remember them and start making them a part of our daily lives. And the more that we all do that, and we all try to like love and respect one another, the better. That's what's going to help heal the planet. So yeah, I've had a lot of conversations about that. And I even wrote an article once called "Nobody Owns the Word Shaman." It's because there's been a lot of people that try to take that word and say nobody can be a shaman, but only these people within this specific tribe. And it's like that word was, not only did it come from Siberia, but that it was actually kind of bastardized by anthropology over time. And like all language is syncretic, really. All language evolves and grows, and then it takes words from other languages. And how many words do we have in our own language that come, like condor and puma, that come from I mean, that's the nature of language, you know, it just evolves. So it's the word we have right now to define what this kind of practitioner is and what this role is in society. And maybe it'll grow into something different, like Gnostikoi or something.
maybe the Mendians can complain. This is a closed system. You're culture appropriating our stuff. Yeah, and I think they were open. I mean, we know that Native Americans in our history accepted runaway black slaves. They accepted the Scottish. There were times when some tribes had more white people or more black people than Native Americans, because that's what you did with the tribe. And I wanted to share a quick story. And in fact, when I did the promo material, it's got the woman with the feathered hair dress, and she's like she's not Native American. I thought I could get somebody upset, but that never happened. When I try to, but I'm not even being politically incorrect, because I remember there was an influencer. She was a Russian girl, and she showed up in Instagram with, again, the alleged Native American feather hairdress, and she got attacked. And she's like, what the hell's wrong with you? I'm from the east of Moscow, from Kazan, where the Russians would wear feathered hairdresses. And then you look in Indonesia, all these places wear them, from all these places. But people just had to have a meltdown over this. It was very fun.
I mean, every spiritual tradition, as you guys know, it all stems from some sort of shamanic component.
And the feather is a symbol of the sky, of traveling the heavens.
Yeah. So I learned to ignore those criticisms a long time ago, and they actually become more and more minimal as the years go by, it seems. And the more I connect with other, you know, shamanic practitioners and elders from other, like even from the First Nations here in North America, you know, everybody's just trying to becoming more and more accepting and open. And they don't want, the more division and conflict that we have, the more divisiveness, the worse things are going to get. So people are just realizing that. But again, I do understand too. I mean, especially like from like my people that I know from the Lakota lineage, like I completely get like 100%, and I do my best to try to respect that because, man, bad rap, you know, they got it bad.
Yeah, as long as you're not exploiting, I don't think Don Daniel has to worry he'll be doing an exercise. He'll be driving one day in a Mercedes with all these Pachacuti calendars and all this money, and like, hey guys, thanks for everything. I've got rich.
No,
they don't have to worry about that.
You don't make much money selling books nowadays. It has to be a passion and something that you love and that you're trying to actually, you know, communicate. Like you don't. This is not the way to make money at this shit.
No. So, even if you get these Silicon Valley guys wanting an ayahuasca trip, there are a few, but
yeah. I mean, yeah, we could always start a cult, but not going to happen in my neck of the woods.
Yeah. So awesome. Well, thanks for that. And have you watched the movie Encanto? I didn't know about the movie until a few weeks ago. My kids are walking around the house, you know, we don't talk about Bruno. And I'm like, what's this song? And then I got caught on the song. Then I watched the movie and I really liked it. But
haven't gotten to it yet, but definitely drawn to it. That's one of the words that's used in Peru is like the raw power of nature, encantos. It's like that enchanting mystical power that the shamans use to kind of like, they draw from that energy to use in their ceremonies. And so it definitely looks like a very enchanting movie for sure.
Yeah, you say Encanto is, there are parts of nature that are immovable, right? The sun's going to come out, the wind, but then there's energies of the nature that humans can have access to change reality.
Yeah, and the way I was taught is that it's sometimes thicker in other areas. It's fluid in and of itself, and so like sacred sites, for instance, much more viable with like that Encantos energy. Whereas just like your average corner on the street might not. It doesn't mean that there's no Encantos that exist, because every place is sacred. But for instance, if you have certain sacred sites that people go to, they flock to, they're praying on, and they're constantly doing ceremony, you're drawing that power. It's just attraction. And I hate using that word because of like the power of attraction, and I don't mean that, but it's just like that gravity of like the energy that gets built up, so you can utilize it. So
Awesome, awesome. Well, we definitely want to talk about some of the rituals in your book and so forth. But first, Vance, any questions from you or the audience? And for the audience, please remember all caps, question marks. If you have a super chat, we'll bring it up. We will try to get to all your questions since more and more people are showing up. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Vance.
Julieta Carmona wanted to know if you could talk about shape shifting, or if you know about that. I know, like in the Don Juan Carlos Castaneda books, they talked about shape shifting a lot, turning into crows and wolves and the coyote and all that stuff. What do you know about that?
yeah, I won't speak to Carlos Castaneda and any of that stuff, but in it's very common in deep ceremonies, for shape shifting to occur, in the sense of my maestro in our ceremonies, which were often at night, specifically using the San Pedro cactus as a sacrament. So that was the entheogen that we would imbibe, the sacred plant, what we call wachuma. And it's very common during the healing ceremony for the a curandero to shift into various animal forms to kind of embody the power and the medicine of that animal. So the cover of my book has a drawing of a certain stele from the Chavin tradition that is a mix of jaguar, serpent, and condor. And that is also emblematic of all three realms, because each one of those animals are totemic of the three realms, and it's the goal of the shamanic practitioner to embody those three animals, because they represent those three realms. It's being perfectly imbalanced,
Right.
perfect balanced. I'm sorry. So it can happen very much that they will act almost possessed or act out as those animals. And when you're on medicine in those ceremonies in the middle of the night, they may actually seem like they are those animals. I mean, they may actually appear as a jaguar, for instance, which happened to me in one of mine. And it's kind of astounding. It's like, it's the medicine, it's the ceremony, it's all kind of working together. And whether or not it's just like me imagining it, but it's very interesting to come out of those ceremonies and multiple people seeing the exact same thing, and seeing the exact same thing take place in someone shapeshifting into a bird or something. So it can happen. And I kind of liken it to like in the voodoo traditions, where, they will, a practitioner will be possessed by a certain liwa, a certain spirit, to embody their aspects, right? Or like in the Hellenistic traditions of kind of like invoking, a certain god or deity to embody their aspects, and their beings as medicine. So that's kind of where, that's my experience of shape shifting. But no, like literal turning into crows and flying into the next state or anything like that. Sorry to disappoint if that.
Yeah, remember, Vince, remember my talk at at the Astronosis? I was talking about the Ophites, the ancient Gnostics, and Hippolytus says that they would shift into animals during their rituals. So they were doing shaman. Scholars think that they were
Right.
dressing up as animals. Again, my joke, history's first furries, but they were.
Yes.
They also were doing the shamanistic thing of shape shifting, and maybe they were dressing up. Maybe it was entheogens, but it's really that part of communing with the animal spirits, right, Daniel?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and so there's a Native American dance that I attend once a year, where it's kind of like the sun dance, but a little bit different. and they actually dress. There's a certain part of that dance called the badger dance where they will dress like and act like badgers, and the leaders of that dance will come up behind the dancers and attack them like badgers as a way of getting rid of negative energy, getting rid of any sort of heavy energy, as a way of like devouring and consuming, so you can be more light and free and moving forward, and things like that. So it's about just embodying that power and the medicine of that animal and channeling it, and using it for a specific purpose.
Yeah, because the Ophites, the serpent, yeah, they were, each archon was an animal that controlled a heaven, and if you would become that, you could overcome that heaven or that animal. So, very interesting.
Well, I read that actually the word shaman comes from seman, which means men who know.
Right.
So there's a connection directly with gnosis. So it's all kind of comes together. Just cultural backdrops, I guess, and environments and so forth. Got another question here. Did you do a vision quest, a traditional Sioux vision quest in your travels and your experience?
Humblecha, is that what they're probably referring to? That's a traditional Lakota vision quest. A Lakota vision quest I have not. I did do a vision quest. I've done a few, but I did do one in my particular tradition called a Pakuwachu, which is a Paco's walk, is what it means. A Paco is just like a shamanic priest in the Indian tradition, and that is a ceremony of spending 3 days on a mountain, on an apu that is your spiritual connector to the other realms. So apu is a word that means Lord. That's the way they see the mountains in Peru. The mountains are like the emissaries of the Hanakpacha here on this realm. And so traditional Pakuwachu is you go and you spend 3 days on the mountain, on your own, by yourself, no tent, no nothing, just you in the mountain, asking for a petition of that Apu spirit, to basically be its ambassador on the planet, to be a disciple, to like take their wisdom and to take it out into the world. And I actually didn't. I had the opportunity to do mine in Peru, but I didn't want to do that. My favorite mountain was actually, we were talking earlier, Miguel, is in Colorado. And Blanca Peak, which is actually the eastern gate of the Navajo Nation, and a very special place to me. So that's where I ended up doing mine.
Okay, great. So, do you think TV is anti-shamanic?
Why would you say that?
I don't know.
Nothing. So to me, the shamanic cosmovision is about everything being conscious, right? So that animistic ideology of just understanding that everything has some sort of purpose and reason, and I don't like the word spirit, but like soul, like something has some aspect of soul that it's being expressed into the world of reality, of this reality, for a reason. So we all are a part of Pachamama, and we all are a part of that consciousness, and we created TVs and cell phones and internet for a reason, and it serves an amazing purpose. I mean, the fact that we're even able to do this right now is pretty outstanding. And it's the kind of like a level of telepathy that like the early, our early ancestors, would have been, floored with. So it's got, but with everything has its like positives and negatives and its addictions, and anything you learn in any indigenous traditions can have their addictions to it as well. Like tobacco, it's got its positives and negatives, so that's my answer to that question.
Everything casts a shadow. Yes.
Yeah.
Everything can be weaponized, even the good stuff.
Yeah.
How about, do they have the particular, gods in the higher realms and so forth, the little characters, or, demigods, gods, or other supernatural beings in particular?
In the Peruvian tradition, there's, various deities like Huiracocha as the creator being, and there are various levels of that. I was actually looking at GRS Mead's book on Simon Magus a
Oh,
few
I was
days
just reading
ago.
that last night. What a
Yeah, and
coincidence.
there's that diagram in there that kind of goes through Simon's, idea of the universe, and you can kind of relate to the various aspects of how they have the creator being laid out into 3 different levels. There's also, it's more related to the natural bodies though as well, nothing too esoteric, such as Mama Kia as the grandmother moon, Inti Taita as father son. But there are beings in the upper realms that they call estrellas, which are just the stars, or the apogeas they also call them, and those are kind of the beings that reside in where Coach's realm that serve as you could call them star guides, ascended masters, things like that. I tend to muck around in the mud a little bit more myself, and like to kind of keep my feet on Pachamama personally.
Kind of grounded then. You're grounded.
Yeah, I'm a more of a
Earth person.
I'm a letdown in some ceremonies because I'm like, stop traveling out in the stars and be here. Be here
No
now.
blue kachina for you.
I like where we
Awesome.
live. It's a cool planet.
Yeah, it can be. But speaking of this planet, well, that actually this ties into my next question, and that's how real is this planet? Obviously, the Gnostics hit the old simulation theory, probably one of the first people in Western civilization to do it. Obviously, you have that tradition in many places in the East, but as you write, the tradition of our world being some sort of illusion is very much found in Mesoamerica and others, even in Africa, right? Even the Dogon tribe. I was surprised about that one, Daniel.
Yeah. So Maya, which is the Hindu word for illusion, it's the world is sort of in the way we interact with it is a sort of smoke screen that can get in the way. In my previous book, Shamanic Kabbalah, I talked a lot about metote, which is a Toltec word for like this fog that exists that prevents us from seeing what I call actuality. So, there are other terms for it, but I have to relate thing into like my Western frame of mind so I can understand it for myself rather than just adopting other terms. And I kind of consider reality being that sort of like matrix that we live in, and actuality being that space that is the absolute, the truth of what exists, and we don't really have a framework of being able to, other than we've developed science as a way to try to get to those absolutes, but it still exists. And I personally believe that the daimonic realms exist as an intermediary between those two, to kind of keep that illusion alive, and for a purpose. I think probably for a specific purpose. I don't like it a lot of the times, and it can be a struggle, and I don't know what that purpose is, other than it's a pretty interesting game. And it keeps us on our toes, always trying to figure out what that absolute is and what that actuality is. But yeah, I definitely, and I that's like a strong component of shamanic ceremony, is to pierce the veil that shrouds that actuality into this world, and of what we see here and what we experience here. And there's puncturing through that veil can be really jarring sometimes. It's not fun, it's not a trip, it's not easy sometimes too. It can, which is why I always suggest, make sure if people are interested in doing this sort of work, you've got to find someone that you trust, very much so, someone that has a really good rapport, and because it can lead to your brain cracking in certain cases, for sure.
Yeah, so I guess the shamanistic quest is just like a mutual hero of us said, which were the 2 things you need to look in life, and that's Philip K. Dick with his 2 questions: what is reality, and what does it mean to be a human being? So Phil was just asking the questions of the journey every shaman needs to take.
He is the modern day shaman. Philip K. Dick
Yeah,
for sure.
for
That
sure.
I hit a lot of it. I mean, when I was getting into shamanic training, it was a lot of his work really that kind of started opening me up and helping me understand, because I can sit there and read from an anthropology text, or I can be given information from a shaman in Peru about this is the upper world, this is the da 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 da. But how does my Western frame of mind really understand that? And Philip K. Dick was one of those authors, including like Terence McKenna and others, that helped me kind of assimilate all that information, which would normally be kind of abstract, to, you know, a real tangible experience as a Western whitey.
Yeah, yeah, because they're bringing in technology, they're bringing in some politics. They're trying to revive the entheogens. Well, Phil, it was amphetamines, but
Yeah.
yeah, the perfect example of a shaman. The guy, whoever asked about the television, he lived a very pop culture, fast food, drugs from the pharmacy life. The
Yeah.
farthest away you would think from a curandero,
Yeah.
but Phil was still able to have these visions. So,
Yeah.
because he was searching. I think that's it, right?
And he now I've read about him, and he wasn't the nicest of individuals, for sure.
No.
He wasn't very virtuous, but the medicine he did put out into the world through his books, I feel like was very important. I mean, Valise definitely got me through a very hard time in my life. That book was
Which
amazing.
one?
Valise.
Everybody pronounce it different. I call
Valise,
it
Valise. Yeah, who knows?
Vance. How do you pronounce it?
Valis.
Okay.
Valis.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Oh,
the normal
Valis
thing
was.
I
I'm
hear.
gonna go the Moondog Vance way. That's the safe route to go. He is
Watch
backed by
Radio
the
Free. Yeah, watch Radio Free Albemuth too. That's where the original form of Valis.
I need to see that movie.
Yeah, it's a great movie.
I hear it's
I
one of the
love it.
better interpretations of his work.
Absolutely. It's very close. It's very close. Well, to the book, Radio Free Albemuth.
Yep.
And then
Yeah,
they
you
built
have,
that into
Yeah, there's two teams. You've got Chris Knowles, Van Sachi, Radio Free Albemuth, and I'm more with the Valis crowd. They're kind of the same story,
They
Daniel,
are.
but Valis is more, he kind of breaks the fourth wall and starts talking about Gnosticism and all that other stuff.
Yeah, and you know, that his concept that this is another illusion breaking, reality breaking thing, but that the empire never ended. You know, that we're still living in this, you know, simultaneity of like time and space, and that's where I kind of get my perspective of reincarnation. Not that there's like this literal, oh, I was Joan of Arc in a past life, but that time and space is actually, and this is part of the illusion thing, that time and space is actually collapsed. We just break it out into a diachronic past, present, and future framework in order to just so our minds don't break.
Right.
And you know, Philip K. Dick really broke into that, and structurally, Valis also, you know, really kind of, you know, pulls you into its own shamanic journey itself. You know, the way that he uses language to kind of, you know, break that fourth wall, and hyper reality, just
it's brilliant.
perfect work. It's one of my favorites.
Same here, and like you, it was I was reading the Nag Hammadi library. It made sense to me, the story of Sophia and the Gnostic Jesus. But yeah, it was really when I read Valis, I was like, aha, now I understand. It was that and Donnie Darko, of all things. That combination was like, now I understand Gnosticism 100%, or at least I feel it. You know?
That's awesome.
So yeah,
Donnie Darko. I love it.
But yeah, I mean, as we're talking, yeah, you don't need to be. You can be a shaman. Everyone, and all these cultures have shamanism. Gnosticism is shamanic. There's so many others. Your book, Shamanic Kabbalah, we're talking about syncretism. You obviously show how the Kabbalah is it's Jewish shamanism, it's Jewish Gnosticism, right?
Totally, it is. Yeah, the Kabbalah I love so much because it's so perfect for the Western mind, because really lays out a structured view of the universe using numbers, using language, diagrams and symbols. It's so detailed, and so effective in terms of like a means of gnosis, of having a relationship with that like composite symbol and all of the information contained therein, and mapping that through various aspects of your life and different adventures in your life. Just it never ever stops. We were talking briefly, I think maybe it was before we started recording, about Crowley, and in his book Magic Without Tears. I'm not like the biggest fan of Crowley, I'm just going to say out front, but his book Magic Without Tears, he says something about Kabbalah is like totally just needs to be a way of life. There's no just like learning it and then you got your certificate and you're graduated. And that's kind of the way just the shamanic path is in general, the great work and anyway, but Kabbalah always has to be applied to every nuance of your life. It's like seeing the symbols of that system everywhere you go. It just makes things richer and richer and richer. So, but yeah, a lot of strong correlations between Kabbalah and not just, Peruvian shamanism, but many other cultures across the planet. And specifically, in the Western mystery tradition and Freemasonry, with the pillars of the Temple of Judaism. There's a temple in Peru, one of the most ancient temples that actually where San Pedro Quirindismo comes from, that has two pillars like Boaz and Joachim of the Temple of Jerusalem, one black, one white, for its entrance. Like it's mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing. And those, for people that don't know Kabbalah, those pillars are embedded into the tree of life, into that symbol system of the Kabbalah, because it's like the whole point of the symbol is that you are in the Temple of Jerusalem. You are that initiate amidst those two pillars, which have all sorts of representations. We could talk forever, but we might bore the world. I think the three of us could probably talk forever about it, but
well, we could always just argue all night about how to pronounce Valis and Kabbalah, Kabbalah. That could be our big one, something petty like that. But yeah, your book does a great job, and you bring a lot of Dion Fortune. What do you think? Well, how does she speak to you? What do you think is her contribution to the modern Kabbalah?
She is a brilliant. I mean, I've of course never met her, but when in her writings, she found a way to take something that, and I know the Golden Dawn had a huge part in this, but in the way that she kind of took Kabbalah and made it just accessible to the modern person from that day. Now, the normal person reading mystical Kabbalah today her book, might not think so, but I feel like it was completely accessible. She speaks to it in such a way that is less Judaic and more just about the human being in this, consciousness. And that's one thing I love about the Western mystery tradition. It kind of makes things a little bit more generic and just understandable, to where you can kind of apply, almost any kind of spiritual path or symbol system to the Kabbalah. And the great thing about her, and not many other people did this in kind of those early occult years of the 20th century, or they didn't do it as well as her, but her fiction, along with her nonfiction, really helps you understand gnosis, path working, that shamanic journey at a practical level, because all her teachings are still in her fiction works. But there's no better way of understanding like the application of magic and mysticism than through her stuff. And that's what she meant to do. It wasn't like an accident. So she's an amazing teacher. And I mean, I call on her all the time, all the time. So yeah, I love her to death.
Awesome. Great deal. Vince, any questions from you or the audience?
Well, let's see. We have Rod Turner want to know if you're familiar with Northern European or Celtic shamanism. If you ever delved into that?
A little bit. I was familiar with it in my earlier years, when I was kind of venturing outside the realms of Christianity. And actually just recently, my wife and I have started garnering an interest in taking a deeper look in it again. Really actually through the book, not in his image. Who was the author of that?
John Lash.
Yeah, and it's not the like best, I think, interpretation of Gnosticism, but the way he kind of describes, that Gnosticoid movement kind of stemming from cultic shamanism really kind of like triggered us, and so we started kind of diving really deep into that. So yeah, not throughout my life, and I'm not an expert by any means. So
alrighty. There was a question too about Philip K. Dick mind melding with the disciple Thomas. Did either of you guys hear about that? I don't remember that.
Yeah, in his Valis experience, when the hologram lifted, he was the Apostle Thomas. Again, people remember their Cleopatra. Well, Phil wasn't going to go for some little guy, or he didn't go for Jesus. At least he didn't say I was Christ. No, he was the Apostle Thomas in the 1st century, fighting this alien evil empire called the Roman Empire or whatever they were. So,
well, he was certainly doubting, wasn't he?
Well, that's the beauty about Phil. I think what legitimizes him the most is he always left room to say, I am batshit crazy. I mean, he left everything on the table. This could be an alien. I could be crazy. This could be God. This could be a delusion. He always, everything was on the table with Phil.
Yeah, he's on a journey.
I think that's like a telltale sign of like a true shaman when you meet one, in my opinion. They will never stick to, well, this is actually the way. This is the way the universe is. Like,
it's not a Mandalorian.
I could be fucking nuts or, whatever. I mean, that like you have to leave room for all of that.
Yeah, everything's possible, or no, nothing's possible.
As soon as you hear this is the way, the collection plate's coming soon.
Yeah, then it's no longer shamanism, in my opinion.
Amen. Good deal. Any other questions, Vince?
That's all I have right now.
All right. And so speaking of holograms and the past, Philip K. Dick and shamanism, how would you define dream time, Daniel? That's something you address in your book, The Shamanic Soul.
Yeah.
For the audience, that's what we're discussing tonight. The Shamanic Soul and the Shamanic Kabbalah, and both are great books.
Thanks. So the dream time, some people would say that the dream time is the only really true reality. Like that is the actuality. And this reality is kind of the smoke and mirrors surrounding it. I don't know if I'm fully there. Of course, I've not had like an Aboriginal initiation yet, so maybe I'll change my mind in the future. But I kind of feel like it's that daimonic space. I feel like it's that intermediary stuff between the soul realm and this world. And so it's that main pathway. It's where imagination resides. It's that primary place of inspiration. And so because of that, I mean, dream time is important. Like my wife and I, we take our dream time seriously. I mean, you will spend most of our conversations throughout the day disseminating our dream time with one another, talking it through. How does it apply? We try to, if we have time, and we were both parents, so if we can have time to record, great. But if not, we're at least trying to talk it through. And we've found over the years, I mean, there are dreams that we've had that just we can show what it was trying to tell us about what was going to happen in our life as our life passed through over the course of 10 years even. It's amazing. And so we'll base a lot of our decisions on dream time on a not a completely daily basis. You have to be discerning as to, okay, this is just my subconscious going apeshit crazy, right. And then this is something coming from the world soul that you need to pay attention to. And so that's one thing that in my shamanic training is that I had to go through, that I was taught to have to like learn that level of discernment, because there's way too many people out there that are just like, they get some wild inclination or idea. They think it's a message from spirit and they go quit their job or leave their husband. And it's like, whoa, like slow down, killer. Like that, That's really not the way to be that excitable and to just, be so brash and to make decisions that just bring all this attention on you and everything. It's really about being slow and patient, and oftentimes messages from Dreamtime are something to just pay attention to, and over the course of years you'll start seeing a result. It's nothing to make an immediate decision over.
Awesome. Yeah,
In my
makes sense.
opinion, in my humble opinion.
And I'm sure, but doesn't Dreamtime spill into the world? I'm sure what synchronicities and other things are part of the waking life, if you would.
That's exactly how I found my maestro, my teacher, was through synchronicity. And Carl Jung, of course, talks about this a lot, and a lot of people talk about it, of the coincidences that happen that have like such meaning, that you saw it from a dream or you saw it from a TV show earlier in the day, because that can be a messenger of Dreamtime through TV or books or whatnot. That I don't normally talk about synchronicity, because again, it's one of those things that some people take to like literally, and they take it too much. And I'm, spirit's talking to me every single day. I'm seeing the number 777 everywhere I go, or 1111, and what does it mean, and freaking out. And like, sometimes it's just like a cool thing too. It doesn't have to be, you'll see the full results of like real synchronicity. It'll be like a big thing. And if not, it's just a cool thing that's happening. But yeah, the spillover happens. And also, I'm not trying to sound so practical that there aren't really weird supernatural things that don't happen, and especially in terms of that spillover of Dreamtime. I've encountered some like really weird experiences where I've had to check my own sanity, that I've encountered of that spillover. But again, it's just about like being discerning and not being like too excitable about it, and not trying to take it too far, like we live in the Buffy universe or anything.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I mean, it can be fun Scooby-Dooing your way through the supernatural stuff.
And I was reading, oh my God, somebody in the chat said they were having a dream with the lead singer of Whitesnake, David Coverdale. Well, I'm glad you had a dream with David Coverdale.
Give him a call.
I think
I'd
I'd rather
show up at his front door.
No, I'm thinking of what was his hot wife in the videos? Remember, she was on the Jaguar. Remember those videos back then? I think I'd rather have Tawny Katane or whatever. She was with Tom Hanks in that movie. Remember when Tom Hanks used to make raunchy movies before he became like a nice
famous
guy?
Yes, he's your everyday guy now.
Yeah, but he made a few raunchy movies, kind of like Porky's movies back then.
Yep. Bachelor Party. And
yeah.
that was one of those no-nos as a kid, man. If you're caught watching Bachelor Party, you get a whooping.
Yeah. We're talking about dreams. I've noticed, and I'll swear to this, my dreams change significantly depending on where I'm sleeping. Like when I used to have an RV, I used to go to different places. Every place I went, I'd have the completely different types of dreams. And when I'm in the house here, my own home, they're pretty much always the same. Lately, it's been about my parents. I don't know, they're always showing up in my dreams lately. But what do you know about that? Is that commensurate with, the holy places?
It's the Encantos. Like Encantos is different everywhere you go. And that's the energy that kind of fuels this sort of experience. So it's like I have a vast difference of sleeping here than if like we go into the city and stay overnight in the city, just like huge, because the energy is really fast and it's sharp, and the dream time is so busy, like we never get any rest. It's insane. And so location matters, and it's not even just like whether or not it's a spiritual location. Like physically, the city is a busy place. There's a lot happening all the time compared to if you're staying in the suburbs or the country. So all of that is takes an effect. Roads are very important too. Roads are very important channels of spiritual energy. So in Peru, the Inca Empire, what their energetic lines of the planet, the ley lines of the planet, were built out. Their roads were built in accordance with those ley lines, and the way they created them, and that's the way roads actually operate, as lines of energy. So I have always noticed wherever I lived, or I've had ceremony, if I had ceremony either in a cul-de-sac, in the stagnation, versus like being next to a busy highway or a very busy road, like that movement and that energy. So physical aspects of your environment totally affect the soul experience.
Not surprised.
Very interesting. Well, I'd like to move on, talk about your comic books. But before that, any other questions from the audience, fans? I wonder if I have my super chats on. Maybe I have them off, but oh well.
Yeah, we got here's what I'm going to pick out from the group. How about dealing with fear during your shamanic sessions, and the way Rod Turner put it, your shamanic trips?
Yeah, you share some pretty intense ones in your book, if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, fear is a huge component of all shamanic experiences, and I think that it's one of the more important ones because it's part of us being human. Terence McKenna said that you're not going into a legitimate psychedelic experience if you're not terrified and shaking at the knees, and that's how I approach every single shamanic experience. That you would think, as many ceremonies I've been in, that I would be able to go into them like feeling okay, but I mean, I'm still knocking at the boots anytime I engage in a ceremony. It's not a fun experience because that fear is your ego, your shadow self that is battling the situation, right? It doesn't want to be checked. The ego, the shadow, that lower aspect of ourselves is constantly wanting to self-sabotage our own lives. It wants to have control. And a shamanic experience is about poking that and like alleviating that control, the shadow's control over your whole being, so that you can have control over it, right? Not get rid of it, but you are the person in control, and it doesn't want that. So it's going to be terrified and cause all sorts of like trouble. So anytime I've experienced anybody having fear, it's like, awesome, cool. Like, this is good. That is good that you're feeling fear. It means that you're not just going in with this like pig-headedness and thinking that you just got this shit straight. And, that means that there's a part of you that knows that like you're humble. You're trying to like approach this in like a real way. And good, because then you'll have the people that experience fear going in will always have an infinitely better experience than the people that are just like, brash and think that they're just going in for another trip.
Sure. Well, Hermetic initiations have the dweller on the threshold, right?
Yeah.
That's where you basically you're facing yourself.
Yeah.
A spoiler.
Yep. Yeah, and that's the shtick right there. Know thyself.
Yeah. How about we were talking about PKD earlier. A couple of questions popped up. One about retrocausation. Does that ring a bell for you? Retrocausation.
That's like changing the past.
Oh, changing the past. Okay. No, that's nothing I've ever really experienced nor care to experience. Most ceremony is about embracing the past and finding a way to, that's what individuation is, right? Bringing those pieces together instead of rejecting them.
Yeah.
So
could be reframing the past, I guess, right?
Sure. Reframing your reaction to it and your response.
I like that. Yeah. For sure.
Okay.
All right. Well, why don't we talk about your comic? And I read the first one of Simon Myth, and I was like, I want to read the rest. I've liked all of them, but I do have some visuals that we can show the audience, and then you can talk about them. Yeah, pretty funny.
You're
pretty
really
cool,
airing the dirty laundry tonight, aren't you?
Yes, I am. I got pictures. All right. right, here you go. Tell the audience about the Simon Myth Chronicles.
Oh, so this project is really near and dear to me. Simon Myth is a character that came to me a long time ago, and I very quickly realized this wasn't just some character I was making up. Simon, and I wrote about this in my book as well. Simon Myth is an ally, a daimonic ally for me. He is definitely, if you want to call it a spirit guide, I don't like that term very much, but he is an inspiration to me. He works with me. I've worked with him in ceremony, and he's always wanted to manifest in fiction in some way, shape, or form. I actually have like 3 or 4 novels that I've written of Simon Myth, but I was never happy with any of them. And my wife finally just slapped me over the head and was like, he needs to be a comic book. He needs to be drawn out. But I previewed Simon Myth in my earlier comic, Psychonaut Presents. But this is like the main story arc, and it's a very Gnostic story about, he's kind of like a modern day wizard magician.
Kind of either a man in black or part of the Invisibles, kind of,
very much,
secret,
that sort of Vertigo-esque sort of title. And he ends up, he's doing this government experiment with magic, because magic is legal and real in this world, and they end up breaking the world and cracking the world, like creating a divide between this world and the world of soul, of the astral plane. And so we kind of catch him after that's already happened, and he's having to fix these various like time space anomalies that are happening because of that like spillover from that original break. And then so I say it's Gnostic because Simon Myth is obviously a play on Simon Magus, and that whole Simon Magus mythology will actually end up playing into the story as it continues. I fortunately only have 1 issue out now. I'm working on issue 2.
Oh man!
But there is a strong connection between him and the Simon of Gnostic mythology, and in fact, the way this universe is built out, the demiurge exists. I'll just say that here. For those that are familiar with Gnostic mythology in this universe, and that's eventually what's causing a lot of the mayhem in the background.
Very cool. And so hopefully we'll see Helen of Tyre, the angels, all Simon and Simon Peter battling out. So basically Simon Magus spoke to you sort of as a daemon or something like that.
If you want to go as far as to say that, I never got the Simon Magus sort of connection, because Simon Myth came to me before I was really getting too heavy into Gnosticism. And so it was later when I kind of started reading into Gnosticism, and I can't remember how I first came across Simon Magus. I think I was looking into the Cainites. And they had an affinity for Simon Magus, and I started looking into him and like, whoa, like Simon Magus, and that's especially where his story really started even developing, because it was just his story wasn't concrete. So there's been this relationship where Simon Myth kind of comes to me and pokes me in these various directions of like nudging me to look up this or go investigate that, go on a drive and go to this park, which is the way allies sort of work in that synchronistic way. I would never venture to say that Simon Magus came to me. I'm not PKD and Thomas or anything, but
that's what Philip K. Dick said, and he says in the exegesis, Simon Magus lives. He knew. And the church always said, all roads lead to Simon Magus. He's the father of all heresy, all magic, everything on the edges of town, if you will.
I'm getting blown away at the more and more I'm finding out about him, and I was listening to something the other day where someone was talking about that the possibility of John the Baptist actually being the teacher of both Simon and Jesus. And they're all part of the same mystery school and went to Egypt, and that just that gets me so
based
excited.
out of Alexandria.
Yeah.
There were 30 disciples. They were all equal. Helen was one of the disciples. She was in charge of the moon, and each of them. And then Jesus screwed up and got himself killed. So of course, then there was a magic battle, and Simon kind of took over. As always.
Yeah. That's a comic book right there, just waiting to happen, sir. That's all I'm saying. Maybe you'll see aspects of that in the future issues. So
I hope so, because I enjoyed the first one. I love how you bring in the Philadelphia experiment. You bring a lot of cool conspiracy culture stuff. And where can people get the first issue then?
You can get it on my website. I have a shop on my website, and it connects you directly to the store where the distributor is at. So that's where I usually point people to, for sure.
Well, cool. I'm excited for more Simon myth.
Thank you.
And then there's some fun stuff you created. Hermes approves.
I went on a little ad campaign, and I had fun with it.
Yeah, for the audience who's going to be listening in audio, which should be out in a couple of days, probably not tomorrow, but a couple of days, we're doing some kind of cool advertising that Daniel made with Hermes endorses this comic book. Of course, Philip K. Dick has to endorse it.
That's right.
The Simon Myth Chronicles is the Gnostic epic of our future needs. Yeah, no doubt Phil would be saying that. Yeah, of course.
That's one of my favorites.
William Burroughs, yeah,
that's the best picture ever.
He's got a copy of your comic in his pocket while he's raising a sword. And then of course, you've got to have Frida.
That's right. Yeah. I actually got flack for this one. Really? I had some people attack me saying I was using her legacy and taking advantage of like blah blah blah, and it was an affront to women and minorities everywhere. And I was like,
speaking of political correct.
Okay, I love Frida Kahlo, and this was about like propping her up and showing my love for her. But all right.
Oh my God! Yeah, but it's okay for Philip K. Dick and Hermes and William Burroughs.
Yeah, nobody had a problem with that. So
yeah. Lord have mercy. So that's well.
I think she would like it.
Of course she would. She was a cool chick.
Yes, she was.
Awesome. And any other questions from the audience, Vance?
Well, let's see. There are a couple of odd ones about Jesus going through a time tunnel, reincarnating as angelic-looking people with white skin from the Gospel of Thomas. Does that make any sense? Anybody hear about that?
I'm not familiar with that from the Gospel of Thomas.
I mean, not either.
No,
it must be a.
I mean, the Gospel of Thomas was actually pretty tame, and it's like sort of esoteric imagery. It's awesome. I love it, but it's just mostly kind of conversation and platitudes.
Yeah, sort of fridge magnet stuff. You put it on your magnet.
Yeah, we got to make a calendar, a Gospel of Thomas motivational calendar.
I love it because in the Bible you read some of these parables of Jesus, and then you read the Gospel of Thomas. Oh, there's the rest of it.
Right. And it's a little bit more plain too.
Yeah, and I don't think somebody just tacked on what they wanted to at the end of it. It just flows too well. So
yeah,
that's just my opinion, though. I like it a lot.
Very true.
I don't know what that person was talking about. It sounds cool.
Yeah, I liked it, but it's 114 sayings, so maybe we're missing something, or retrocausation is erased. Yeah. Sometimes now you get into arguments on the internet, or my wife will get into arguments that they just pull the Mandela effect card on me. They were losing an argument. So it's got to be the Mandela effect. The past was erased. So
the Berenstain Bears did it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's Steen. Berenstain.
Well, time really isn't what we think it is. Time is a function of memory and consciousness, you know.
And it's more spiral or torus like than it is. Yeah.
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 There's one more, you know, we're taught there's one thread of time that everybody's like marching down the road, but everybody's got their own time base, you know.
Hmm.
It's like Einstein said.
Oh
Agreed.
yeah, and I think that's
Yeah.
what the shamanistic journey helps with, right, Daniel? Break down normative time, that programmed left brain. We're just going forward, and the past is solid. You know, the future and the present are fluid, but somehow the past is not fluid. But
Yeah.
everything is fluid. So
Yeah. No, yeah, and it can get weird too. I mean, it sounds like a cool esoteric concept, but the experience of it is very, very wild because it's one thing to have like a hallucination, like a visual hallucination, but when you're experiencing something within space and within time, it can definitely get kind of trippy. It can get kind of funky. Because and you definitely can come out of some experiences, really shedding that framework of the linear, that diachronic linear, the ruler. We'll call it the time ruler.
That reminds me
Time
of
Lord.
ghosts. Yeah, what do the shamans think about ghosts, and how do they explain that? There's so many different types of ghosts, like the ones that are memories and the ones,
Yeah, there's
haunting.
there's so many interpretations. I mean, the ancestors, those that have come before us and remain as teachers,
Ah,
is obviously a very big aspect to that. They call those the Machula Alanchis, the old ones that are like here to keep teaching us. That's a very important aspect. But I mean, what I love about shamanic traditions is there's no set church and dogma, right? So every family, not just lineage, but every family has like their own individual interpretation of that. So for me, I'm not really sure about ghosts in the sense of like, oh, it was actually this spirit. It seems like they could be like recordings caught in time. That's been my experience because they're usually just like on repeat, like a record that just like you gotta just get the needle moving. That's been my experience of them. But I have I say that, and I have had some experiences and ceremonies of those in my shamanic lineage. The teachers in my lineage have been very present, and been available to like converse with and have teachings, and whether that's the actual person or consciousness, or if it's some kind of energetic structure within that lineage that just exists in the soul realm, like an avatar of that person's consciousness or personification. I don't know. That's part of the joy of the mysteries, is I don't want to have a direct answer to that. I kind of like it being a mystery.
well, the shamans believe that we're all individual, isolated consciousness, or is there kind of a meeting of the grand consciousness at some point, at some level?
Are you asking that, or is a reader asking?
No, I'm asking that.
You're asking that? Um, it it seems so. My understanding and perspective of what I've been taught is what I can speak to, and there is a universal consciousness. There is this overarching thing that we're all a part of, but it manifests in individualized form. And this is kind of taught through the auspices of Kabbalah too on the Tree of Life. There starts
Sure.
with a singular sephirot, a singular notion of consciousness, and it begins to divide out and split
Yeah.
out. So
Hands
it,
off.
yeah, and it goes into the other sephirot in such a way as it spills over as emanation, so it can experience itself. I for one, and I've had some experiences in shamanic ceremony where you get into that singular consciousness, and I actually hate it. I don't like, I don't, it's not love and light to me. I actually enjoy this differentiation, that it's much more enjoyable to me. That singular consciousness is like, wait, because there's less difference, there's less separation, and so everything is a little bit like too unified for my personal tastes. I like versatility, and so that's why, you know, for me, the point of shamanic ceremony is to kind of experience those realms, but to come back here and experience this, because it's just much more dynamic and crazy.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to spend your life in the Akashic Library, right?
Yeah, that sounds so boring. We got so
Got to
much.
check out a book once in a while.
Yeah, it's fun to visit, but you don't want to live there.
Very cool. I also like in your book you talk about Ursula Le Guin's The Dispossessed and some of her work. I mean,
That book.
Philip K. Dick and Ursula Le Guin went to the same high school. I'm like,
Yeah,
I wish if I could go back in time, I'd go to their high school and see what water fountain were they drinking from? What were they
Yeah.
doing? Because these two minds are singular when it talks about modern shamanism, wouldn't you think?
right. Yeah, she completely lays out the same thing we're talking about with time, with the simultaneity theory in that book. And actually that plays out in some of her other books as well, and spawns some of her other stories. But the thing about that book that really hit on me was the kind of anarchistic component of the way that the people lived, and I kind of relate that to the shamanic component in way of life. You know, it's, and I mean in the true sense of anarchy, you know, not like chaos, but the true individualized way of living, and being able to, you know, have a communal aspect of living, but still the individual is respected and propped up for their own, you know, sense of self-worth. And yeah, God, The Dispossessed, that's another book that, you know, that was one of my shamanic texts for sure. You know, you can find, it's not, and that's why, like, you know, when I talk about Simon myth, like the realms of in fiction and nonfiction, like there's no differentiation when you're dealing with that world soul or the pleroma. Like it all meshes together, and you get just as much like teachings and worth from the Matrix, or you know, Ursula K. Le Guin or PKD, than you do from, you know, any other like sacred texts, or the you know, whatever, the Torah. Or in fact, you get more, really, because for me, I think like fiction is really speaking to people. Movies are really speaking, like people want stories and they're consuming them, and they're people are able to consume things, you know, much more easily through a fictional tale, because you have a little bit of sense of separation, and you're not being preached to necessarily, but then you're pulled in, you cry because something happens in the movie, you know, we learn things from them. There are mythologies for the day. So yeah.
No, well said. I mean, as Doctor Who said, our souls are not made of atoms, they're made of stories. People wonder why humans will not accept facts, and it seems nobody wants to hear facts, because that's not how our brain is wired. We accept stories and narratives before we will accept facts. So he who makes the better story usually will win the day, whether it's propaganda, or they can hit some archetype, like with the Bible, the idea of the suffering servant, the logos, the dying and rising God man. You package that up. I mean, that's going to win over don't hurt anybody or be nice to, you know, those facts will not go, but a story that'll take you to some places. So
yeah, definitely. Have you read The Universe Story by Brian Swim and Thomas Berry?
No.
Oh, you should check that out. I'll send that to you in email in case you forget it. But he's a mathematical cosmologist from the University of California, and he lays out the birth and history of the universe from a mathematical perspective, but tells it as a story, and talks of story in such a way that this is like our heritage as human beings. It is in our DNA, and actually helps us understand our place in the universe, rather than just, okay, here's the Big Bang, it happened, everything was gas. It is fantastic. You've got to read that book. It is, you guys would love it.
Look forward to it. Yeah, and even, I mean, scientists don't want to admit it, but the Big Bang is a mythology. It is a religious cosmology, right, Ben? I mean, there's a lot of gaps. There's a lot of storytelling and liberties you take, but people think it's the truth.
Yeah, the singularity, before the singularity, once upon a time, Time Cruise created. Wait a minute.
Oh, he brought Tom Cruise into it. Oh my God.
Yeah, it's just another creation story. So awesome. Well, this has been great. Any last questions from the audience or yourself, fans?
Well, yeah. Here's one. Dr. Ben one. This is kind of a complicated one, so
Oh boy.
hold on. Is there anything to be gained by exploiting cognitive dissonance, holding incompatible, conflicting beliefs, which, when confronted, brings about mental stress? Is exploiting that worth exploring?
Wow, we're gonna have to break that down.
I know that's a
Yeah,
lot of things to
warned you.
unpack. Yeah.
So, is there anything to be so cognitive distance? Can you go through that one more time?
Sure. Is there anything to be gained by exploiting cognitive dissonance, which and is exploiting cognitive dissonance worth exploring? In other words, learn about a whole bunch of different systems and everything, and they're conflicting and so forth. And can something come out of that? That's the way I interpret the question.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's always everything to be gained by learning every system that you can. And now, in terms of like, the conflictual nature of that, I mean, there's, the universe exists like through the pull and tug of like the polarities that exist within nature at all times. So learning that among the systems of the various processes and spiritual paths that we're diving into is like just as important as understanding the nature of the universe itself. There's always this like tug of war that's happening between the right and the left, the masculine, the feminine, the black and the white.
Polarities, yeah.
Yeah, and that kind of helps create the fluctuation of things within the universe, and we can see that all the way down at the atomic level. So
creates
yeah,
motion.
right. And so the problem is that we get tipped over into that tug of war, and the goal, and I guess this is what he's referring to in terms of cognitive dissonance, is kind of being a little meta, not to go Mark Zuckerberg on you, but I mean in the true sense of like a meta narrative of like making
Right.
yourself kind of not above it in the hierarchical sense, but being able to know and understand this is like the left, this is the right, and there's something more than that. There's something more than just that dichotomy, because that dichotomy is what keeps that Maya, that illusion, the matrix of this illusion like set and structured. And so when you move beyond that is whenever you're, and that can be even be as simple as even like exercising political paradigms. There's a exercise I have in my book that I call reality cosplay, and I actually adopted it from Robert Anton Wilson in his book Prometheus Rising, where it's like truly just reality cosplay into a political narrative or a spiritual narrative and fully live it for a certain period of time. And I mean fully live it, like believe it. Like today I'm going to be a alt-right conservative, and I'm going to live that fully for a week and believe in it and live as it. And then next week I'm going to be a ultra liberal, neoliberal, whatever. And then next week I'm going to be a communist. Next week I'm going to be a Buddhist, whatever. And as you do that, there's this, he calls it, quantum he talks about it in quantum psychology, but it's this kind of like meta narrative circuit that he talks about in the brain, that as you do that, it's not that any of those sensibilities or frameworks become worthless, but you just get to understand a more holistic picture of the world, and you don't get pulled into those narratives. Because that's the problem, is being a slave to and getting pulled into those specific narratives that exist. And that like from a postmodern perspective, we're kind of growing into this space where we need to kind of be in a meta narrative state where we can understand these as various roles and functions, but we don't have to be a slave to them in any way, shape, or form. We can utilize them for what they're worth, but we can also see, very quickly their weaknesses, and just move beyond that.
I agree.
Well said. Yeah, well said indeed. I love that. I love that. Yeah, cosplaying yourself to individuation. And for the audience in Daniel's book, The Shamanic Soul, he has all these other exercises. He talks about his own rituals, the rituals of the curanderos, the ritual of the pachacuri. And I mean, there's all sizes. For example, you talk about the importance of journaling. You talk about the idea of the monomyth, how it fits in our life, breathing, mind tracking. You talk about the mesa, the arte and shamanism, and just everything. So much there. But I know the audience will find something useful for them if you're just looking for, you know, spiritual tools for your toolbox, which is something we're all looking for, something to get us through the day or open those channels of communication. So you'll find it all there. So I definitely highly recommend you get Daniel's book. And where can they find more about you? I'll have it in the show notes. But Audio Daniel, where is your website?
DanielMullerWeb.com is my website. You can also find me on Instagram and Facebook at Daniel Muller Web. And my book is available for pre-order right now from Llewellyn Worldwide. It's a good publisher.
And if people are interested in your tradition of shamanism, what advice do you give them besides write you $1 million check?
Come to my church.
Come to your church. Leave gold in the pot.
Yeah, I mean, there's ways that in which you can, Peru is very open and it's various traditions. It's just, it's just finding the right person and finding the right community. And I'm always happy to have conversations with people. You can email me at my website, and I love kind of talking about trying to find the right, fit for each person if they're interested in that. But always just, be ready and be prepared to take it seriously for sure. Because yeah, we got to be authentic and real with this stuff.
Yeah. And as I said at the beginning, let it call you. Sometimes I say, you don't pick books, books pick you. We've been talking about running into Philip K. Dick at the right time in our lives. If you're honest and you're seeking, these things will happen to you. Maybe it's not shamanism, maybe it's not Philip K. Dick. It could be, I don't know, Sufism. It could be ritual magic. It could be going back to church of your parents. But it's the solution. The spiritual solution is there.
Right.
And there is a pathway for you to, as we're talking about, find out who you are and find out what reality is. So,
well said.
Oh, well, thank you, sir. You inspire me. So we are at the end. First, the audience in the chat rooms, thank you so much. You guys always have some good questions, some great comments. I might go watch some White Snake music videos after.
Yeah, man. I'm in the mood for glam metal all of a sudden.
There you go. Yeah, the hairspray. Oh, my God. Even talk about a shamanistic hairdress.
Hell yeah. I'm down.
But yeah, I'm down too. But thank you so much for you guys keeping us company. You guys are amazing. And Vance, thank you for keeping us journey. And I hope nobody squeezed your shaman tonight.
No, I'm not ashamed that I let people squeeze the shaman.
Did Birdie approve of the interview?
He seems very happy back there. I don't even hear him. Right, good night, Birdie.
Good totem.
He's sleeping.
Well, Daniel, thank you very much. It's been great. We certainly hope to get you back and discuss more of your books. But yeah, good luck with this book. And again, I highly recommend it and all of your other work. And I look forward to the second edition of Simon Myth.
I'll send it your way as soon as I'm done.
Can't
Thanks,
wait.
Miguel. Thanks, Vance.
Thank you very much. And to everybody else, thanks for being here. And we will see you on the other side of the desert of the real. Good night, everybody.
Good night.